So after weeks, months of house hunting, you finally found the perfect house, you're in contract, your mortgage is all lined up, and we're nearing closing. Yay! But how are you going to take title to that house?
No.
Hello everyone, I am DeLynn Gaston and this is Moving Forward TV, and I have with me my co-host, fill-in person, Gigi D.
Hello, how are you?
Gigi is from Dynamic Title. So we had, thanks for joining me again, Gigi.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
I love this. And Gigi is always there. Let me tell you something about Gigi at Dynamic Title. What is your thing have besides Duchess of Dirt, which I totally love? Have notary will travel?
Yes.
Have notary will travel.
Mobile
so
notary.
Gigi, so let me do a little plug for Gigi first, okay? So let's do a little.
Go right ahead.
I know. A little Gigi plug. Gigi also marries people. How funny. And one day she said to me, "Oh, I married him," or something like that. And I'm like, "Excuse me, you're married to a guy named Paul. I know him." Right? So you
Yes.
do weddings.
Yep. Weddings, mobile notary. I do a lot of wills for different attorneys that are doing things in the area. You know, they need somebody that can go out and they're in, so they give me a call and I go and visit their customers and have them sign everything they need to sign.
So Gigi is an excellent source. So if you ever need to get a hold of her, Dynamic Title, get a hold of them. They got her number, and or call me. I got her number. But she even during COVID, you know, I got to give kudos to her. We had, obviously, you know, people are still doing, trying to buy houses during that period of time, trying to refinance houses during that time, and Gigi, elderly couple, I can't remember their name, but doesn't matter. Elderly couple, and they, you did it outside.
A lot of them, yes.
Yeah, you said that they had a lanai in the back, and you had a package, and they had a package, and you sat on the outside of the lanai.
The screen room, yes.
The screen room. Everybody had their masks on and everything, and she went through page at a time with them and told them where to sign and everything. So talk about going above and beyond the call of duty.
Thinking outside the box.
That's
what you gotta do during
I know.
COVID. I mean, that was
so. Thank you for that smart thinking.
Yeah.
You know, that was good. Kept the world rolling, right?
Oh, yeah.
So now, what would Gigi and I decided to talk about today, because Gigi is a busy person, and it's not often I get her on here. So when I do, I want to do all title stuff. So one of the things, we have a lot of people that move from out of state. A lot of people, you know, Florida is a melting pot. Everybody is from somewhere. And surprisingly enough, every single state does things differently. So in the state of Florida, we close, I know our realtor partners out there know this, but I know a lot of you share this with your clients as well, so that they know as well. So in the state of Florida, we close with title companies. There are other states who close with attorneys, and actually a buyer has his attorney and a seller has their attorney, and there's two attorneys involved. Other states have two title companies involved, the seller's title company and the buyer's title company. Down here in Florida, we have just one title company, and they close that way. It is different for, you know, like I said, nationwide. But then not only that, but how a person takes title to the property. I've been doing this, as you all know, 100 years, and I never really got into this side of it until I moved down here to Florida 25 years ago and started realizing all of the differences as well. So Gigi's going to enlighten us on that today. There's a whole page of them. Can you see that? No, you probably can't. There's an entire page of different ways you can take title to the property. So you want to chat about them one at a time?
Sure.
But let's start by saying,
I'm not an attorney, I'm just a title chick, so, all I can do is tell you about what I have researched recently, because a lot of these, we don't even do some of these.
we don't use them, right?
Exactly. I mean, I do a general warranty deed, and some of these would involve a quitclaim deed, which title companies aren't supposed to do a quitclaim deed, so there's different things that you can do. You basically would need to consult an attorney to find out exactly what is best for you.
Right.
I mean, I've got a whole list of things here that we can talk about. Basically, the very easy one is sole ownership.
Yeah, let's do the easy ones.
Yeah. Sole ownership. What happens is if a person who is unmarried purchases a property, well, they're all by themselves. They don't have somebody to share ownership with, which is kind of a good thing. You get to make all the decisions. But you also are not protected with the fact that if you pass on, what happens to your property? Well, then you need a will. You have to have a will to be able to devise your property to your heirs. So
if you're single, buying a house by yourself, you really need to have a will.
Yes, exactly. And if you're married, now you can actually own a property alone if you're married, but if that's your homestead property, you can't own it by yourself. Your spouse has homestead rights to that property.
Which is because Florida is what's known as a homestead state.
Yes, yes.
And not all states are like this. Again, this is definitely one of those things that I think it should be more national. I mean,
Yeah.
we should all do it the same across the country, but yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
State
Oh,
to
definitely.
state, we all differ.
Definitely, yeah. Well, they can't claim a homestead exemption if they're living somewhere else. So that's one thing. You're not protected by creditors if you're a married person and own a property without your spouse and you don't live there. If you get a judgment against you, it's going to attach to that property. So that's one thing that ends up happening. Tenants in common. Basically what that is, it defaults. Anything defaults to tenants in common unless something is said of record that shows different. So basically, it can be an equal ownership by two people, or it can vary depending on what your agreement is with that person. Maybe you and I own a property, and I own 40%, but you own 60%. You maybe put more money in to buy it than I did. Well, that can be tenants in common. If one of us dies, then the property then goes to our heir. In other words, there's something that you can do that's joint tenants with right of survivorship. Well, that's an equal ownership, and if I pass away and DeLynn and I own property, then she gets the whole property. But when it's tenants in common, then it goes to the other person's heirs. So
now, so that brings up a good point. When you said if you owned it, you and I own a property 60-40, is tenants in common automatically 50-50, or you can put in the paperwork 60-40?
Right. It's going to say like a percentage of the ownership is going to be for this person, and a percentage is going to be for this person,
Okay.
and maybe another percentage for somebody else too.
Okay. So tenants in common can be multiple people then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Where joint tenants, there's a joint tenancy, and everything is exactly the same as tenants in common, except it is an equal percentage.
Okay.
So
there you go.
that one's a little bit different that way, but everything's the same as tenants in common.
So
as
now
far as
on the
rules
tenants
go.
in common or on the joint tenancy, if somebody dies,
It goes to their heirs.
goes to their heirs. Okay.
Right.
So again, they should have a will
Right.
as well, saying that my 50% of this property goes to my children or whatever.
Right, and then, but there's something too, I can't remember what it's called, I know it's in my notes here, but basically, just say you don't have a will, and you own a property, then it goes by how the law reads. as to,
okay.
if you have, mom and dad, but no brother and sister or no spouse, then there's a pecking order, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
So in that particular situation, even if they didn't have a will and they died and it's tenants in common or joint tenancy, then the heirs would still be able to inherit that property.
Gotcha.
Now, the joint tenants with right of survivorship, now that's a situation where your partner, whoever your partner is, or many partners, then you own the property, and once one of you passes away, the other guy wins. So basically...
Now, that could be multiple people as well?
I believe so.
So it could be like, a family, 5 children. So 5 children inherited the house all
As joint
equally,
tenants
and
with
then
right of
one of the
survivorship.
brothers dies, then it goes evenly to the other 4.
Right.
And then the sister dies, and then it goes evenly
Well,
to the remaining people?
that's tenants in common. If it's joint tenants with right of survivorship, then it doesn't go to the heirs. It's the
Oh, yeah,
people
you're
that
right.
are in that, it gets so confusing, believe me,
Right,
I get
right.
it. But no, that person, then just say there's, I don't know, just make it easy for my world, there's 4 of us, okay? We all own the property as joint tenants with right of survivorship. And one of us passes away. Well, then it's a third, because we were 25, 25, 25, and 25
Right.
before.
Right.
So basically, the last guy wins. He gets it 100%. So
There you go.
that's kind of the way that works. But in the same breath, if you are the last guy, now you better do something, because now all of a sudden your property is not just go to the next guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Make sense?
Yes, it does.
So 50-50 ownership, one person dies, then the other person owns it 100%.
Okay.
So it's by percentages and something like
Okay.
that. But
Okay.
it doesn't go to their heirs. You've elected to have that by yourself,
The right of survivorship.
Right.
Goes to the other person on
right.
the
A
title
lot of
to
people do that,
property.
like if they're living together or something,
Oh,
So-
yes.
So, these 2 people have owned a property together, a guy and a girl or whoever, they get together, they're living there, they're maintaining the property. Well, they don't want it to go to Sister Sue, they want it to
Go to the
be
other
one of the
person.
other 2 people that have
Okay.
been paying on that property. The tenants in common is kind of what we were talking about before. It's kind of better for people that are married that have more like a joint, his, mine, and ours, So
Right.
it could be
And that mixed families, you're right.
Exactly,
You're
and
right.
there's a lot of that
Second
nowadays.
marriages or whatever for people, right. And they want to make sure that their portion goes to their children.
Exactly. And then tenants by the entireties. What that is it has to be a married couple, because they...
Okay, so that's the one mostly for married couples. I know
Right.
You're not giving advice, but okay, so that's the one I was thinking about earlier.
Right, it's the
Okay.
same. It's the same kind of as joint tenants with right of survivorship, because if one of them dies, then the property interest goes to the joinder of the spouse. Okay,
Okay.
but if it's the surviving spouse gets the entire property, so that's why tenants entireties would be for people that want it's kind of like joint tenants, but you're married. Joint tenants with right of survivorship, but you're married people. So,
Right.
So husband and wife owns a property. It is tenants by the entireties. That's the way that it...
Because they're one unit
They're-
buying that house,
Right.
as you explained
exactly.
to me.
So that unit of husband and wife is not 50-50 like joint tenants with right of survivorship, but it is, it does end up being the last guy wins 100%. So, and that's why if you are a mixed family, maybe you want to do the tenants in common, and again, that's what your attorney might advise you to do.
Right.
So
That makes sense. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that. You bring up an excellent point there, yeah.
Well, and then other ways that you can own property is like through a corporation or through a LLC or a...
Which is getting more popular these days.
Yep,
And
or a
trusts
partnership.
and such,
Yep.
or partnership, right.
Right. Well, with that kind of stuff, it kind of makes it where people don't have to know anything about your business if it's in a trust.
Right.
So, I can be an anonymous person, and the trustee is the one that signs on behalf of that trust. So the trustee can be the attorney that prepared the trust for you. A lot of times, I remember when I worked for the probate attorney, he has fireproof safes, and he keeps all those wills himself. And then oh gosh, I lose my brain sometimes. The person that is the personal representative of the estate comes to the attorney and says, hey, my mom and dad passed away, what do we do now? And then he advises them what to do at this point, provides the original will to the clerk of circuit court and to the probate department to be able to probate that will. So,
And probably looks up the original deed or whatever that's recorded in the land records to see how they were holding title to that piece of property.
Exactly. Right. But if it's in the will, then,
Hopefully it matches the deed, right?
Well, it has to match who the person is that is saying, I'm leaving this house to this guy. So,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So, but if you have no minor children, you can't transfer your homestead property only to a spouse. So if there's minor children, they don't inherit that homestead exemption. It goes away. So if there's no spouse.
Oh.
So, even though you've had this house for 30 years and your homestead has been protected, your taxes only went up like 3% per year over the last 30 years.
Which is what the homestead protection is. That's one of the things that the state of Florida has is homestead protections and exemptions where we get a discount on our real estate taxes.
Yes.
And I actually remember our property appraiser, Mike Wells, talking about, a married couple and the homestead exemption for the real estate taxes was just in the husband's name. And he died, and the real estate taxes shot up.
Oh, yeah.
So the other thing that we want to mention is both of you. So if you are married, and it is your homestead for both of you, make sure both of you apply for that homestead exemption. Because if the person who has the homestead exemption dies and the other person, it's not on them, taxes are going to shoot up, and that has happened, sadly.
Oh, wow.
People who owned a house 30 years or something like that, and her taxes shot up after her husband passed away. No one knew.
Yep. And that's one of the things that makes life a lot better for us is when you have a homestead exemption, they can't, any creditors you might have, maybe your credit card or whatever, they can't take your house or force you to sell it.
Right.
So homestead's really important for people that reside here. But what happens is, if you've had the house for 30 years, and just say you have a beautiful waterfront property and you started paying taxes on $150,000. Well, it's only gone up 3% per year. Now you want to turn around and you want to, just say you want to add your kids because now dad's gone and mom's by herself, and now you have 3 sons, and these 3 sons, you want to be able to leave that property to them, but how do you avoid the probate, and if you turn around and deed the property to somebody with a remainder of life estate, that was one that I didn't really talk about. You can deed the property and still retain your homestead exemption if you do with a remainder of life estate. So that was another thing. I didn't have it in my notes. I forgot all about it.
But there's another one.
So now if the 3 sons own this property, you still get to do that homestead exemption and keep it the way that it has been. However, when something happens to you, Mom, way up there.
Taxes are
especially on a homestead property that's been on the water
or owned for a long period
for
of
30
time.
years. Yeah,
right.
because they've only been paying taxes on, maybe $300,000 at this moment. If it's gone up 3% per year, I don't know what the figures are, but now all of a sudden these 3 kids are going to get this property and go, what do you do? You can't afford to pay those taxes.
I know.
You're actually trying to make their mortgage payment and taxes on your own house.
Yeah.
So That's something you run into too when you do probate. I don't know, you want to tear your hair out.
I
right?
know, all kinds of things. All right, so we got down to corporations and stuff like that. Florida Land Trust. Tell
Yeah.
me about that one.
Well, that's the one where you put the property into a trust.
Okay.
And there's a couple of different things. The attorney can prepare a trust for you, but in our world, if the powers are on the deed, meaning with full right to sell, encumber, mortgage, any of this, it's a long line of
Because that's
on
what
the
you're
deed.
doing when you're on that
Right.
deed in any of these formats is you're,
Right. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So it's like you have the powers on the deed, then we don't even have to review your trust. And that's where the anonymous people come into play. We don't have to know who the beneficiaries of this trust are. It's not our business. As long as those powers are on the deed and or even a co-trustee or like if the trustee that's on the deed passes away, do you have not a co-trustee, but a successor trustee? I'm remembering this stuff.
See, look at you.
The successor trustee now is named on that deed as well, so now we still don't have to review that trust. It doesn't
Okay.
matter as long as that person has full power and authority to convey, sell, mortgage, encumber, whatever it is.
And if you're a seller of a property, that is one thing that the title company is going to ask you for is you guys are going to need proof, especially in a situation where someone has passed away. They're going to need proof that whoever is selling the property has the rights to sell that property.
Exactly.
So that's one of the things, if you're a listing agent and you're taking a listing on a property, somebody who passed away or something like that, then by all means, make sure that you have that stuff lined up, because otherwise they can't do anything. You can't sell that property until you've proved that they have the right to sell that property.
Yeah, and if it's in a trust and you are dealing with the trustee and all of a sudden the sister shows up and she's not on that deed, she's not
Right.
a person that can sign the contract even to start the ball rolling. So, and then one other little trick that I have in that situation is the tax collector actually is always the last guy to know. So I always start backwards. I start when I'm doing a search on a property, I start with the tax collector and find out who is paying the taxes, or if there's a mortgage, you can see it there, who's been paying those taxes, and then it goes to the property appraiser's office. Now, he might even show already somebody else's name on that. But the guy that is actually the first guy to get it is the clerk of the circuit court, because that's where we record the deeds of record to let somebody know that this property transfer has happened. So I do it backwards to make sure that the person that is on the text is not actually the person that can sign a contract always. So,
And that brings up another question, I guess, kind of. Death certificates have to be recorded. Who does that?
well, we run into a situation with that too, because what happens is when you do probate, that's all like out per statute. You can't see some of this stuff when probate's going on. And one of the things that they never show us is the death certificate. So it's all like, it isn't the word redacted, but
Hidden from view.
hidden from our view, yes.
Yes.
But an actual title searcher can see everything because they pay to see everything. So,
Right.
sometimes if there's a police officer that owns a property, you can't find anything on it.
Yes,
You're
you
like,
cannot.
"Ah."
You're right.
So, but in this particular situation, the person that owns the property, that's how you go backwards to get it. But the death certificate, we would have to record it if we can't see it. And if our searcher can't find it, it's just part of the probate, which is not showing.
Which is why it's important, God forbid somebody passes away. Well, I shouldn't say that because everyone's going to pass away at some point, right? Get several originals.
Yes.
Because you can only record an original of any document.
Right.
So make sure you have a couple of originals of the
Well,
death certificate.
what we've been able to do now too, in this day and age, is rather than record the death certificate, is we can record an affidavit that says that we have reviewed that death certificate.
Oh, that's
So,
good.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier.
yeah.
Because before, we used to have to take the white out and our little stickers and put it over the cause of death, because you can't record how somebody died.
Private information.
And that's the long form death certificate. The short one doesn't have it on it. So.
All right, so on to homestead exemption benefits. Oh, well, actually, before we do that, can we do the ladybird deed? Because I don't want to run out of time, and
Yes.
and we're running out of time. Let's do the ladybird deed.
Well, that's kind of where you do a deed, and as soon as you die, the people that are named as your beneficiaries then get your property. But the advantage to that, from what I understand, I've never done one in my life, or, I've seen them of record, but you can still sell your property without your heirs signing it. You can mortgage without having to get all your kids to sign the mortgage. You actually still own the property until you're dead. Then you don't.
Called a life enhanced estate deed, allows yourself and your spouse life estate in the homestead upon the death. So like you said, so your heirs, your children, let's say, are on the property, but you have full access to that house and rights to that house for the rest of your life.
Well, that was the one that I was talking about, where you have a remainder of life estate. So that's a little bit different than this ladybird deed, because with a remainder of life estate, you only have a homestead interest in that property. That's all.
Oh.
The fee simple ownership is the people that you have devised, you have you were the grantor, they are the grantee.
Yeah.
So you still own the property if you do the ladybird.
Okay.
For everything.
Okay. So you can do write the taxes off on your tax return, on your income tax return. You can still write the taxes off because you still own the property. Gotcha. I know the difference now.
Okay. I don't know that part.
That's what I'm thinking.
Accounting a degree, I didn't like taxes out. That was it. That was done.
So needless to say, there's a lot of different options that people have.
Yes.
And they should definitely be, and especially like you and I were saying, when there comes down to divorce, and we didn't even really talk about that. Like, what happens if you have the property and you own it, tenants by the entireties, and then you get divorced, what happens then?
Tenants in common. Then you're tenants in common, and what happens is, if you remarry, you better redo your deed, because the protection for that is now not because of the two of you, it's now.
Right. And something that I want to jump in, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll go quick, but when you do get divorced or whatever, a lot of times this is a big mistake that we see happen frequently, is somebody said, well, I'm not responsible for that mortgage anymore because I signed over, at the divorce, I signed it over. Well, you might have signed a quitclaim deed. All you did was take your rights off that house. That quitclaim deed, you no longer have any rights onto that house, but you are still liable on the mortgage. If the mortgage loan was in both names, you are still liable on that debt. So just be careful with things like that. We are running out of time. Gigi, thank you so much. I appreciate you as always. We are today, please like us, share us, all that other stuff. Get us out there. We are today and every day.
Moving forward.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.